Welcome to Aionios, a world trapped in eternal stasis, caught in the grasps of an upheld calamity. Here in Aionios, the souls of two worlds are trapped and made to fight and die, only to be reborn again and made to do it all over. Some of these souls, called soldiers, broke free and forged a new path, one tied with old heroes from the worlds before. But annihilation was only postponed, and while those set free have fallen into hiding, the Endless now persists, and has done so for 1,000 years since. Hello, I am the Hearth Guy, and this is Xenoblade Chronicles 3, a story all about the present, and what it takes to move on from it. If you have not seen my previous video on Aionios and this game, I heavily suggest you go back and do so, as I'll be jumping right into the story and many parts of the setting were explained there. If you already have, or just don't care, then come on in and take a seat, because this is just the beginning. In 1,000 years after the battle with Alpha, the battle lines of Keves and Agnes have not changed. They have only intensified. More soldiers die in unending battles for supremacy, in wars that they don't even realize are pointless. More soldiers are churned out, lifetime after lifetime, ignorant of the cycle they live in. One of these turns of the clock comes a fresh batch of soldiers, and in that batch are 4 new recruits. Lanz, Uni, Yorin, and Noah. They're a tight-knit bunch. Lanz naturally takes a role as a tank, Uni becomes a sharpshooter, and Yorin is a healer, all while Noah, despite preferring not to fight, acts as a leader. Lanz is what you might consider a living wall in more ways than one. He's not quick to sensitivity, but he's naturally defensive of his friends. Uni has a short fuse and a sharp tongue, and could probably outswear a sailor if she knew any actual swears, but her face value approach balances out Lanz's regular griping and Noah's kind of melodramatic streak. And Yorin tries. He really tries. He doesn't succeed, but still. And Noah is thoughtful, dedicated, and perhaps naturally inclined towards philosophical wonderings. He never wanted to fight, but it was the life he was set into. In fact, for the longest time, it's believed by the others and their fellow recruits, like this little stunted turd Garvel, that Noah was unable to summon a blade of his own. Garvel and his own little toddler's brigade made it a habit of mocking Noah and his group. Usually Noah and Yorin, as Yorin struggled to do anything combat-related. Noah didn't have much trouble showing Garvel up, usually, but it just isn't in Noah's nature to fight. He knows he has to, but the thrill of combat doesn't appeal to him as it might to Lanz or Uni, so it's good his more aggressive friends are there to back him up from time to time. Noah still feels like a burden, that he weighs the others down, but Lanz never once believed that. He's his team's shield, it's his job to keep them safe no matter what. But Noah still needed a new sword after Garvel went and broke his. So he goes to see the local craftsman, Riku. Because Riku is everywhere now. Still, totally normal, common, variety not on. And Riku presents Noah with Lucky 7. Riku makes up some cockamamie story about it being a magic sword forged by 7 Nopon smiths over 7 years, just to get their attention. Better yet, he then has Lanz cut his own blade in half by trying to slash it. It's an impressive blade that can cut anything, and Noah doesn't want it. To him, it's too strong, but Riku calls him out on that. It's not about being too strong. It's about Noah being scared. Noah is scared to fight, scared to hurt, scared of the brutal world they live in and what it'll turn them into. So scared that he lied about not being able to summon his own blade. But that was just the answer Riku was looking for. The power of the sword doesn't belong in the hands of someone who doesn't appreciate its weight. Riku tells Noah that to refuse to fight when there is fighting to be done is the way of a coward. Something Riku knows all too well. It is the way towards his friends' deaths. So Noah must pick up the sword and use his summoned blade as a sheath of sorts in battle, to hold Lucky 7 until he really needs its power. This moment and this conversation with Riku would come to be a defining piece of Noah's character from that day forward. Noah hates fighting. It's antithetical to his very soul. But he knows that to do nothing when there is an enemy beating down on you is not an act of principle, but of cowardice. Pacifism in the face of an unrelenting foe is not a virtue. It is a restriction. Of course, this doesn't just make everything easy for the guy. The living stain that is Garvel and his bunch still make life especially miserable for them. Particularly Yoren for being the living embodiment of a weak link. No offense, Yoren. This state of almost habitual failure even results in Noah's squad losing a test battle against Garvel on Noah's birthday, which doesn't always mean as much for soldiers, but some do like to commemorate it in small ways. Lanz honestly takes it more personally than Noah does, blaming Yoren for the loss due to his recklessness in trying to get enemy fire off them. He half agrees to apologize later, but he doesn't get to it. See, a big event came up shortly after, a homecoming. A rare event where a soldier made it their full lifespan. So even the Queen, that Melia replacement, comes for the send-off. The whole of their colony forms together to watch a celebration to one of their own's death. Golden motes rising in the sky before the false queen they worship, while a Mobius watches, and the off-seer tunes play. Most eyes were on the homecoming, envious of the chance to be returned to the embrace of their queen. But Noah's eyes were on one of the players, a soldier and off-seer named Chris. But soon, violence would begin, as their home colony is attacked by Agnes. Fires burn, and buildings collapse all around them. Garvel and Lanz are trapped underneath fallen debris, and despite it all, it's Yoren who is first to run to save them, inspiring the others to do the same, perhaps in some small way feeling as though he'd paid Lanz back. However...
Watch out!
In those last moments, he still smiles. And while it's his inability to apologize which haunts Lanz, it's Yoren's smile that haunts Noah. Still, they have to get to safety. But with Agnes all around, it seems that their short lives will be cut even shorter. Until a figure single-handedly saves them. A soldier not much older than them. In the aftermath, while Lanz recedes into himself, grappling with what he's just lost and failed to do, this young soldier introduces herself as Ethel, who's rather famous by this point for being so skilled that she brought up her own colony up several ranks by herself. Despite that, she still laments her inability to save more. They only meet briefly, but she does notice a certain something about the blade Noah wields. After Yoren's death and the homecoming he witnessed where Chris's playing captivated him, Noah felt a calling to be an Offseer, to be able to grant some modicum of peace and dignity to a person's last moments. So Noah's path diverged from Uni and Lanz for a minute, as he was sent to the Kevesi castle to train under Chris. It's possible that Noah trained under Chris while he still was in the same colony as Lanz and Uni, and perhaps this event with Yoren's death even happened during that time. But based off Uni and Lanz's unfamiliarity with Chris later on, I don't believe that to be the case. For several years, his mentor would teach him the Kevesi Offseer tune, and live alongside him as they brought serenity to the last moments of many. But for Chris, he saw only the sorrowful, inevitable end. On the day of the homecoming that Noah witnessed, Noah could tell Chris was sad while so many others were happy. As to why, Chris reveals to Noah that it was because of the emotions of the one he was sending off. The man being sent on was content in his ending, satisfied to have reached that far, but in Chris's mind what he saw was a man on the brink of tears, dying not by his own will, but simply because his life had reached a certain expiration date. To not choose one's own end was pure misery to Chris. So maybe that is why, a week from his own homecoming, Chris would tell his student that he was satisfied with his end being now, so long as Noah kept moving. And Chris ended it on his own terms, by throwing himself from a cliff. As for Noah, he would continue on, his teacher's Offseer's flute as a memento, to always remember and cherish, even as Chris's final smile hung in his mind. Those trained in Colony 14 would be separated, with Uni and Lanz reuniting with Noah and being made elite soldiers, acting as his escorts, as the job of Offseer is a respected and downright sacred role. They were also joined by Riku, and a veteran from the colony they were to join, Mwamba of Colony 9. Together they would fight continuously, and 4 years would pass as we finally reach the beginning of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. It begins with a battle, as is natural in Aionios. A battle between Noah's Colony 9 and the Agnian colony Sigma, a word which the 2020s have ruined for me. It is brutal and desperate, but Colony Sigma is scoured from Aionios as every single soldier is killed, leaving their flame clock empty and their furnace to collapse. Shout out to this random guy who died in the most Elpenor way possible. If you know, you know. But while others celebrate the taking of their enemies' lives, Noah instead looks somberly over the battlefield and begins playing his melody for Kevis and Agnes alike. Lanz doesn't understand Noah's desire to bring peace of any kind to their enemy, but to Noah, it's his duty to send their spirits on. Unfortunately for his escorts, it means getting left behind by the transport every single time, so these folks get mandatory cardio. Now, I know I normally just go on about story and lore and themes and all that fun stuff, but come on, look at this. The environments of Xenoblade 3 are simply stunning, permeated with an air of barren wilderness along with the echoes of what Aionios used to be. The graphics are remarkable for the Switch and really demonstrates how good a game can look on an even technically handheld console. Even in smaller locales like Colony 9, each detail is handcrafted to look somewhat ruddy or worn up, as befitting a military encampment always in a state of combat. Worn out mess tables, a towering furnace that takes up most of the space, a bathhouse, what? Well, at least it's more tasteful than some other media that employs them, Western or Eastern, or even in this same franchise now that I think about it. Believe it or not, it's actually an important scene for setting up initial struggles for Lanz and Noah. Noah's recovering mental health, which has improved gradually despite his losses, and Lanz's guilt over Yoren's death and his inability to apologize, which drives him to constant improvement and protection of the friends he still has, even if they're rooted in a deep sense of survivor's guilt. All while Uni, again, balances both of them out and provides the levity needed so neither get too far in their own heads. Well, almost. Noah would be in his own head regardless. The day after, the whole colony is alerted to a mission directly from the castle, an incoming signal of ether energy which has attracted Agnes's attention. Normally, our heroes would set out immediately, but as Noah is prone to do, he sidetracks them with the need to assist others, again to Lanz's frustration. See, that whole bit about Lanz pushing himself doesn't extend to just himself. He sees it as sort of a competition with his fellow soldiers, a way to push himself and others, even if he pushes too far. So Noah's naturally giving attitude is a little contradictory to Lanz. Not enough to make him refuse to help, but enough to make Lanz gripe whenever Noah makes a decision he sees as overly sensitive. But even before they begin setting out, they notice something peculiar. The Kevis army has brought out silver-ranked artillery and soldiers for this operation, suggesting clearly that it is far more important than they let on. Uni doesn't see much of a problem with it, and Lanz is just dismissive. Orders are orders. Still, along the way, Noah can feel it, a weight in the air that this is far from a simple mission, and insists his team act cautiously, even more forcefully than normal, especially to Lanz. Their veteran friend, Mwamba, also feels the pressure and decides to transfer to a safer position after the mission is done. So, anyone else got flags? Next he'll say he's only...
So, it's gonna be next month.
Yeah, just a little longer.
Oh yeah, he ain't making it. It's even worse when Mwamba asks Noah to send him off for his homecoming, and when the whole conversation reminds Noah of Yoren. The game is subtle in how not subtle it is. At least for now, Mwamba heads off to be part of a separate squad, and our elite soldiers march into the valley where the Ether Signatures is coming from. Black fog interferes with communications, leaving Noah and his unit to descend into the valley ahead of the main force. Then, the attack begins. Agnes and Kevis fire on each other, and the source of the signal, a cloaked ship which crash lands into the valley floor, fires out mechanical drones to its defense. Soon enough, the valley is in chaos. Noah's team carves a way through Agnes' soldiers and mechs. Lanz is the blunt wall which holds the line, Uni guards and sustains the back as a healer, and Noah is the blade in the middle which directs and cuts forward. But even they are totally unprepared for the strange machines they fight, which Riku correctly and without missing a beat identifies as pilotless. Gee, I wonder why you know that, Riku. At the crash site, a firefight is in full motion. A handful of soldiers with eye patches fight to protect their cargo, an Ouroboros stone. Sandwiched between Kevis and Agnes, it's all these folks can do to fend them off, as their leader, a mountain of a man, loses one soldier after another. And as his automatons are brought down too, he is left the last man standing, while Noah's squad comes closer. They can see he's no Agnian, but before any problem solving can begin, a very important moment happens.
Kavesi troops. 3 of them.
It seems we are just about the only ones left. And there's our objective.
Noah.
Yeah. We'll have to fight.
Mio?
Got it.
A clash between Kevis and Agnes, their squad and another. The only people to have successfully made it to the crash site while the rest of their armies are bogged down in combat or dead. But this will be a frustrating fight for both, as they find themselves evenly matched. Against Agnian elites, equivalent to Noah's squad. A young woman with white hair, a slender man with glasses, and a small woman with a very big hammer. In other words, a small but hard-hitting assaulter who is countered by Lanz's wall-like approach, a tactical support whose own abilities are unable to outdo Uni, and a fleet-footed offseer who fights to a certain rhythm, one Noah can't seem to zero in on to hit her. Despite that, she's put off, as her superior hearing can sense a faint ringing from his sword. But Noah realizes the simplicity in her attacks and the pattern. To the tune of the Agnian offseers, following that rhythm, and knowing the tune, he begins to predict her moves, which is really a great moment to help Noah stand out compared to other protagonists. The differences when comparing Rex to Noah is obvious. But when comparing Noah and Shulk, it's very interesting to see the way the two approach combat. What we see of Shulk in combat is usually actually rather aggressive and straightforward. Despite their differences in personality, Shulk and Rex both will fight their way through a problem, while Noah will usually think his way through one. Noah manages to push his opponent back, swiping a weapon from her hand and sending her on the defensive when he notices the fighting stopped. There's no more gunfire. Lanz and Uni are exhausted, as are their opponents. Every sensation erupts in his head as he whispers unthinkable words to himself. To run. They'll kill each other at this rate, and for some reason it doesn't sit right in that moment, as he stares across at his enemy. He tries to get through to her, to know why she still fights him. But they have enemies to kill, and that's enough in this moment, because that's all they've known to be enough. Noah wants to end this without more death, but even a second of hesitation will mean his death in the face of a quicker opponent. So it's fortunate that the man who watches them notices something about Noah's sword, and the stone. So, Guernica Vandam decides to make an entrance.
What do you all think you're doing? Why the fighting?
Guernica's question is met by perhaps expected responses. That there are enemies to kill, to avenge the friends they've lost, to even the score. But Noah sees it clearly. No one here wants to kill, but they see their lives set before them, and they have no choice. It's fight or die, fight or starve, because of the flame clock. Sure, they technically are allowed to just stop fighting and wither away, but what kind of decision is that? Is it any surprise, then, that they take loved ones away from each other? That they in turn lose the ones they love? When they live in a world where you have to kill to survive, Noah's frustration and clear anger. Well, it's a good enough answer for Guernica, especially with that sword. So he decides to trust them with the truth. Right before he gets turned into a donut. From the dust and darkness a figure emerges, holding Wamba in one arm and a friend to the Agnians in another. A monster which savors the death before it. One that echoes long-lost memories inside Uni's head.
Uni! What's wrong? What is it? Seen that thing before?
No, how could I have?
Noah?
No, never. This is no normal creature. It's something else.
Oi, oi! Don't go stopping on my account. Get back to killing each other. Come on! I thought that was your whole raison d'etre.
It's speaking!
Mobius. What's wrong? Too worried about your buddies to fight? Can't have that. All right. You scum! Oh, wow. This is some entertainment. Two rival factions murdering each other over one little rock. Well, your objective is staring you in the face. Try and take it. 'Cause you'll be dead before you can lay a finger on it. Don't you just love it? Don't you want to savor it? The sweet taste of a life cut short.
The Agnian officer, who is, of course, Mio, jumps headfirst to avenge her fallen friend, as does Lance and Uni from Wamba. The other three naturally join in, the Agnian tactician failing to get his allies to stop, but the Mobius is beyond them. Guernica, still being alive despite having a built-in internal ventilation shaft now, jumps into the transport ship and charges the Mobius. But a mere machine in the face of a Mobius? There was only one way that was going to end, as it rips Guernica from the machine and prepares to kill him. Something protective in Noah stirs, as this time it's him running into the fray. Again, the tactician hesitates, but is dragged in by necessity. As for the first time in their lives, the Agnians and Kevesi fight side by side to slay the Mobius. It's, well, imperfect. Hostility is still rampant between them, and they are barely making a dent in their enemy, as Guernica uses the last of his life in pleading for the Ouroboros stone to work to save these kids. And it responds. The Mobius scatters their defenses and is about to kill Mio when Noah steps between, just in time for Guernica to set off the stone.
An Officer? Really? Miyabi? This is all such a waste. Mio, is that why you're here? For recognition? Mio, I was just looking for a training partner. You've nothing to apologize. Mio, Sana, take this. I'm giving you my whole self. So please, live life in my state.
Miyabi! Run with all the breath you have! We can take care of ourselves!
Stop crying, lads! It won't change anything.
You're
What did I just do?
Quick learners, Mio and Noah catch on to their new state of being, much to their enemy's annoyance. So he gives them a quick lesson. They are Ouroboros, he's Mobius. When Kevis and Agnes come together, they are almost on par with Mobius. But in his own words, they're failures, second-rate and mortal enemies to Mobius. And he's looking to give them a crash course on their new lives, primarily by bringing them to a screeching halt. But he seems actually impressed when they manage to stall him, so he decides to call it a loss on his part. But he's a rather sore loser, so he gives them one last little gift, signaling to the sky the image of Mobius, and giving all his fellows a clear message. New Ouroboros have awakened. Now their lives will never know peace, and he'll stand back and watch as they crumble around him. As the Mobius leaves and Mio and Noah separate, concern makes way for aggression, before Guernica again steps in to somehow still be alive. I swear, if he wasn't the designated old man who has to die in this game, he would have been invincible. Again, just for a moment, the two groups set aside their problems and try to make Guernica comfortable, as he gives them a few revelations. First, upon seeing his face, he lets them know he's 60 years old, aging being a concept they are wholly unfamiliar with. Second, he gives them the shock that they are all Ouroboros now. untethered by the flame clocks, incapable of combining like they did before, as he gives them a final message.
They'll hunt you constantly, relentlessly without rest. Even so, there's one place that might give you a chance. Sword March. The land pierced by a great sword. You gotta find our hope. Our city. It's the only way you're gonna defeat the real enemy. And reclaim what was lost. The way the world and life should be. And listen. Don't give up. 10 years? You kids deserve better. Is the will of Ouroboros. You kids, and you alone.
Hey, is she?
Yeah, an Agnian officer.
When Mio thanks Noah for sending Guernica off with her, he responds with words that remind her of an old friend. It is the purpose of an officer to send on the departed, but the moment is over, and the others believe that it's time to go their separate ways. The tactician, whose name is revealed to be Tyon, insists that Mio and Senna, the other one, return with him to the colony, while Lance and Uni push for Noah to do the same with them. Many people died, on both sides, and there's plenty of unresolved aggression between them. Noah de-escalates some of it, however, as he has seen the memories of Mio, and knows her own loss through her very eyes. The power to understand, simple empathy it may be, but a powerful tool for calming tempers, and central to being an Ouroboros. Mio feels the same. She knows the loss Noah has experienced could easily be something they themselves caused. So Riku, ever pushing things in the direction he likes, asks them plainly what they plan to do about it. And this other Nopon, Manana, does it too, though I don't think she's in the know. Maybe. Noah and the others agree to go back to their colonies, Tyon and Lance giving the snarkiest goodbyes possible.
There you have it. I sincerely hope for your safe return.
You take care too. Take care not to die in a ditch somewhere, that is.
And as Noah and Mio still feel as though something is left undone, but what neither could know is that there is no home for them to return to now. As they approach the colony position, old friends now see them as the enemy, their irises glowing red. As it turns out, the Mobius was telling the truth. The whole world is now their enemy. Meanwhile, Mio's group suffers the same problem, and Tyon sees the red light in their irises. Both groups have to evade former comrades until they find themselves right back where they started, the valley crash site. Uneasy distance persists between them, both groups now outcast but still with lingering resentment for each other. The words of Guernica ring in Noah's ears, however, and he decides that they need to live. And to do that, they need each other. They have to find the city. They're all fugitives now, and if Mobius did have something to do with it, they stand a better chance together than apart. Though reluctant, Tyon admits he has a point, even more so since they're all going to be on the run anyway. So they might as well have somewhere to run to. Lance is doubtful, though. He's lived his life for his eventual homecoming, and to abandon that dream so quickly hurts him. The praises, the cheers, the adulation of all who look upon those who made it to the end That's what Lan sees. That's what he wants for himself. To know that what happened in the past was worth it. To be able to be proud of his life. But to Noah, all he saw was an altar built on the bodies of countless dead. A glorified sacrifice to the whims of war. What kind of legacy is that? Noah can't tell Lance what to do, but he does what he can to at least have the chance to find the same answers they're all looking for. And for that, they must seek the sword, which sounds just fine to Mio. After all this, they can't fight each other anymore. Senna, echoing Mio, joins behind her, leaving Taion to agree, even if he's unsteady about it. Which means Lance is left little choice, and all 6 are in agreement. So Noah starts off with introductions. Awkward ones at that. We get some tidbits about each character. Noah wants to write his own music, Mio keeps a diary, Uni collects clovers, Senna is, strong. Like, real strong. Like an ant. As for Taion...
I don't have hobbies.
Wow, colony dull.
Oh, wow, just gonna call me out like that, are you, game? Also, Manana is the cook, and Riku always lies. Jury's still out on Manana, though. Lance is stubborn, but they're a party now, unified with purpose, and with memory. For Guernica Vandam. Uni, for her part, feels relief at knowing his name, considering what they did for him. However, they are dirty as all get out and need new threads, so they start looking for the freshest fits. Well, not the freshest maybe, but still. Wait, huh? Hey, Noah, where are you looking? Hold up, did they all just change right behind them? I guess that makes sense, they are soldiers. And they're embarrassed. And out of here. So, yeah, fun fact. Flame Clock reinforces certain conditioning and inhibits parts of the core human experience. In other words, these 3 boys just had their hormones awaken in the span of about an hour and are getting hit like a truck. Later that night, while a team now, there remains some distance as they all do their own things. Except the Nopon, because they're probably all part of some secret society. The first to bridge this gap is, who else, but Noah and Mio. As Mio keeps track of her time left, only 3 months, she wonders about what she can achieve in that time, if the words Guernica gave them could really be true. And Noah, ever thinking inward, wonders if that's her desire as a legacy. You'll notice that he's rather obsessed with this idea, especially as he wonders about those he's seen passed on and the legacies they had. Whether they were content in the end and perhaps pertinent now, whether those who remain can be at peace with the contentment of those who are gone. Noah often grapples with what the purpose of that connection is.
Agnes and Kevis, working together as a team. Taion seems a little dissatisfied, but at the time, his thinking was quite aligned with mine. Finding a path that lets us all live. I will make that my mission.
Somewhere deep in this world, Mobius gather.
Wild ride!
And here they make wagers and bets on the lives they take, arguing on who is responsible. We learn the title of the Mobius who attacked and lost to Ouroboros. D. But even so, it would appear that to them, Ouroboros' existence is simply another turn of the clock, as Z watches them from the seats and affirms that none may stop the flow.
Kay, will you go?
If you say I go, I go.
Well then, let us see how far the flow brings them this time.
Next
Yeah!
Guys, what do you think you're doing?
Okay, I'm with Taion on this one. What kind of Dragon Ball nonsense is this? But no, Lance and Senna are actually trying to do what Mio and Noah did. Taion, cautionary that he is, questions both why they think they can even do it and why they think they're each other's partners. As for the latter, it's just more a feeling, some innate connection between the two. Which, to Taion's displeasure, surmises that means he's paired with Uni. He tries to brush it off and maybe sort of antagonize Senna and Lance, but still, as Noah points out, they're not wholly off. Noah and Mio changed whenever Noah was set on a strong desire. to protect Mio, implying that's the trigger for the change into Ouroboros. Uni, being, well, herself, figures Taion couldn't manage such emotions in the first place, and laughs at the idea of joining with him. Gee, I wonder what this whole thing is representative of. Either way, it's an adjustment period for everyone, living a new life among former enemies without the need to kill, which is, frankly, a dream come true for Noah, so he emphasizes this to the others, who avoid combat and avoid killing where they don't need to. Taion is disillusioned, but there's no point anymore, so rather than fight, they'll run. Until they reach the city. Taion's not the only one cynical, though. Lance has low hopes about the old grudges and old differences, but the conversation draws their attention to the differences they actually have. The core crystal in Senna's chest, Lana's somewhat mechanical-like body. These differences prompts Taion, the skeptic, to tell them to question everything, to ignore differences as merely a matter of perspective. Of course, Uni's a more upfront, take-it-as-you-see-it kind of person, which almost immediately sparks an argument. Although it would be more accurate to describe it as Uni picking a fight with a wholly non-confrontational Taion. Now, let's talk something else about Xenoblade 3. Before, I never really went into gameplay when talking about Xenoblades 1 or 2, but it feels pertinent to this discussion. See, Xenoblade has always had the luxury of playing around with its gameplay. From one title to the next, it could advance or deepen in some way. Xenoblade 1's combat is perfectly serviceable, but 2 and 3 expand upon the basics in ways that make me enjoy combat. 2's blade systems weren't carried over to 3, but it was refined in a less luck-based way with the heroes. More on them later. Heck, even Torna, a DLC prequel, has DNA in the gameplay of 3, with the rest spots and the camping sites, which, through the unique background animation, shows off a lot of subtle characterization, which in turn builds connection between you, the player, and the characters. This goes even further with how the various party members fight. The Kevesi arts and attacks function as they would in the first game, while Agnians follow after the second game. And this is done seamlessly, with neither style ever outperforming the other. Combat is fluid, and maneuvering in combat has been improved with features like quick dodging and being able to fight in water. And chain attacks have never felt more dynamic, even if sometimes I'd wish the chain attack music would shut up for the actual fight music to play. But whatever. Even item collection, one of the most tedious aspects of any Xenoblade game, is better. You might say, Hearth Guy, this game was made well after both other Xenoblade games. Of course gameplay will be better. And to that I say, Fallout 76. As the group takes notice of a downed Ferronis and starts finding some footing, elsewhere an old acquaintance of Noah, Lance, and Uni has other worries. Ethel, once commander of a renowned silver rank colony, has fallen from grace, her colony having dropped to dirt rank despite her renown. She still commands the loyalty of her colony, but life's gotten harder for everyone involved. Made even worse now that a consul is arriving with low tolerance for dirt and a very interesting set of orders for Ethel to hunt down some traitorous bandits. Said traitorous bandits are busy learning about some interesting functions that Ouroboros has unlocked, like sharing combat experience via osmosis, which in turn allows them to shift blades and arts. Game mechanics-wise, this allows any of the main party to use any class that they have sufficiently fought alongside. In the story, it's another example of Ouroboros' power to clean away that which divides them. Now, even the divides of Agnian and Kevesi style of combat can be removed, and they can fight with each other's weapons, retaining the uniqueness of each and every one, while still allowing the others to take that power for themselves. But new weapons or no, there's still a combination of risks and distance to overcome, which both are trouble for Mio, a fact Taion is well aware of. So, he suggests traveling along a shorter but more dangerous route through Agnian territory. Taion tries to play it off as simple good risk-reward decision-making, and it isn't that bad walking right past an Agnian outpost, but the truth of the matter is that he's worried about Mio. He's not quick to show it, but Taion wants to do everything he can to get Mio to safety, to possibly free her from those 3 short months she has left, even if it means putting them all in danger. Senna's on his side about it too, naturally, but Noah can tell what Mio wants. She wants to make sure everyone else is safe rather than worrying about the time she has left. It'd be pointless to get themselves killed while trying to spare her own time, and it's not how she wants to do things. So Noah respects her decision and backs her up, leading them into a dusty no man's land much to Taion's chagrin. and soon to everyone's discomfort as it's an actual desert they decide to hike through. A couple little character notes to pick up on, such as lands being resistant to the heat, possibly because of the whole actually being a machina thing, and Mio having an aversion to heat of any kind. Also, notice how Noah only says that he too is worn out after seeing Mio's exhaustion. Is it a stretch to think he only said that for her benefit? Maybe, but Noah has a habit of subtly trying to help people out without being too obvious. Regardless, they find an oasis just within reach, formed in the crater of an annihilation event. Rather apropos, a place of rest and comfort in the shadow of a cataclysmic event, just like the party themselves. This is really the first relaxed instant we get with the Ouroboros, a situation where all of them can just unwind for a moment in the chaos which has quickly overtaken their lives. But just as it is in character for most of them to take the chance to relax, it's in character for Noah and Tyon to be the ones on the side, discussing plans. The area they're in, the Aegis Wilderness, frequently suffers annihilation events and black fog, and Tyon is busy at work tracking that data, much to Noah's appreciation. Relaxing and cooling off is well and good, but soon they're back on the road, during which Mio asks about Noah's blade, and the reason it seems to glow. Noah's hesitant at first, but she tells her the story of his true blade, Lucky 7, and how it's normally sheathed in its red casing. He also explains how he changed the name, even if he doesn't tell her what the name is, since Noah's naming conventions are questionable sometimes. Actually, hold on. I don't think he ever says what he named it. I'm sure that's not important. Although Noah does find it notable that Mio so far is the second person to notice the peculiarity of his blade. The first, of course, being Ethel. Speaking of, as they approach a valley in which they find fresh footprints, the ground begins to quake and rumble with the movement of a great machine, which grinds the rock walls of the valley away under its wheels. The Pharaonis of Colony 4, Ethel's colony, fires artillery barrages at the Ouroboros, their irises glowing red with the influence of Mobius K, who blinds their senses and makes them perceive Noah and the others as monsters. Still, Ethel helped them once. She's renowned even in Agnes for her strength and loyalty, so Noah tries to reason with her to remind her that she once risked her own life to save theirs, but words won't cut it, not while her eyes are clouded by deceit. Instead, they are forced to find cover again and again as barrages and soldiers hound them, the Mobius's red iris allowing her to convey information on their movements directly to her troops. Unfortunately, her troops are getting caught in the crossfire, demolished underneath artillery fire. But following the rule of engagement they set up before, they do not fight. Instead, Ouroboros runs, trying to find cover as black fog begins to roll in and disrupt Mobius's line of sight. However, while Ethel's eyes are clouded, her mind remains sharp, and she predicts their movement, cutting them off as they arrive out from some caverns. Cornered and afraid, they fight back, but while they do, Noah holds back. Even while they are pushed to the brink by a far superior foe, he does not choose to use the Ouroboros' power, fearing that it could kill her. If things continued like this, one of them likely would have had to die, though it's providential that the same black frog from before rolls in and disrupts Mobius K's control over her, allowing Noah to break through just enough for her to stop, until the consul arrives to take her place, striking her with lightning for disobedience. Now, Ouroboros have a far more dangerous opponent to deal with. Having never fought a consul before, they do well for themselves until he reveals himself as Mobius, like their prior foe, and reveals a second truth to them, his power to absorb the life from those tied to the flame clocks. As Ethel's soldiers drop to the ground, wounds inflicted by the party begin to close up and heal, more so while Lance and Uni try to counter with even more attacks, and he just keeps healing by draining the life from Colony 4, which draws Tyon's eyes again to the flame clock as he realizes what's happening.
Away! He's stealing from the clocks!
My dear boy, your faulty intuition is shit!
Say what you want about Mobius, but they sure do have the most fun in this nightmare-scape of a world. Unlike Noah, who is frozen in inaction. If he fights, then the Mobius will heal by draining the soldiers of Colony 4, including Ethel. If he does not fight, then he and everyone with him will die pointless deaths. No matter what reasonings the others have, Noah can't bring himself to make the call. so he finds a third option. The flame clock. He wonders what would happen if they broke it. He doesn't know if it would simply kill the soldiers instead, but at this rate they'll all die. Mio's with him, his partner, so he doesn't have to bear the burden alone. But it's not just Mio. Lan's, too, there to take the plunge with him, along with Uni, Taion, and Senna. In their first real task of teamwork, Mio and Noah try to get in close as the rest draw fire and cover their backs. Easier said than done while Kay controls the artillery of the Varanus, littering the field with random bouts of fire and lasers. The ground cracks and their path is disrupted. Noah and Mio are knocked apart and to the ground as more rain down around them. Lan sees Noah in danger. Senna sees Mio in danger. Without second thoughts and a surging desire to protect their friends, they move together and make a connection. Two lifespans of memories crashing together and forming a new Ouroboros. A wall to defend. But no wall is perfect. With a bigger target, Mobius K focuses fire on the newly merged duo. Even with Uni and Taion healing, they can't last forever under continued and direct fire, as their shield cracks and shatters and their bodies are surrounded by scorching light. Uni's desire to save is strong enough for both her and her own partner, as another connection is made. Their wounds heal as soon as they are made thanks to the now combined powers of Uni and Taion as an Ouroboros. These two instances of Ouroboros coming together aren't the only fortuitous things. As though the world itself is fighting back, the black fog coalesces around the battlefield and nearly blinds Mobius K. Enough for the two Ouroboroses to get a jump on him. His power to heal is also blocked for a moment, and while he's held down, it is the perfect moment to shatter the chains with the flame clock. But it's no good. Even the Ouroboroses can't break the flame clock, which embodies the very will of Mobius and their cycle. And it's both left them closer to K, and left him free to heal himself. Till Noah catches a glimpse of Riku to the side, and remembers his words. In one last-ditch effort, Noah asks Mio to trust him. With a kick off of K, because screw him honestly, they cancel their interlink at the last moment. A sword of origin in one hand and Mio's in the other, Noah cleaves the embodiment of this world and severs the clock's connection to the colony and to the console, leaving just one thing to do. Kill a Mobius. Without the flame clock, he's still a beast, but against 3 Ouroboros and Lucky 7, his death was assured, as K falls and they get a good look at his face, aged and wrinkled, like Guernica. To me, this suggests either that Mobius somehow aged, however so slowly, or that K was once a member of the city. I don't know exactly how that would work, but there's some things later on which suggests it's possible. Ethel wakes up soon after to the shock of what just transpired. Her attack on Noah and the others and the dead consul, whose body has begun to disperse like a homecoming. Except instead of golden motes, it's pale blue. Noah remembered, though, that even the consul feared death, so he pulls out his flute. But Lance and Taion try to stop him. They see no reason to send him on to give any modicum of respect or closure to his life. Even Mio isn't so sure about it. Still, Noah felt his fear and his spirit. It wasn't so different from their own. He's compelled to respond, to send him off somewhere. This reminds Mio the words of an old friend again, who once thought the same thing of those from Kevis. So she too plays for the fallen Mobius, a simple act of compassion. I think it'd be easy to just make Noah an overly weepy, bleeding heart who feels bad for everyone all the time. But instead he has a grounded feeling to him. He knows fully well that the consul would not have done him any favors, and he probably doesn't deserve such respect even in death. But that's who Noah is. Empathy is a gift so underutilized in this day and age. Being able to see the humanity in even those who you see as inhuman. Because it's ultimately empathy that distinguishes the good from the bad. From our heroes and the Mobius. Mobius like K couldn't care less. There is no humanization between him and the pawns he throws to die. It's what makes him so monstrous. It's why I feel having Noah be this quiet but firm source of compassion is a better choice than what a lot of people might turn to, by either making him some hyper-aggressive edgelord who feels nothing when they kill an enemy, or as I said, an overly weepy bleeding heart. Said compassion is confusing to the others, enough that they can't even agree on why he does it. Lance thinks he's overly kind, Senna thinks he just enjoys his job as an officer, and Uni thinks he's doing it on instinct. But if it was instinct, would his hands still shake so much? As he ponders the enormous risk he took shattering the flame clock? But still, they're alive. Together. Ethel's troops wake back up, and while wary of the Agnians in their midst, Ethel grants them safety for saving their lives and freeing them from the need for constant battle. With their own chance to rest and think, they ponder back on their encounter with the Consul K. More importantly, the similarity between Agnian and Kevesi colonies and their shared use of consuls. Because if those consuls are the same between Agnes and Keves, as Tyon observes, then it throws into question the very nature of the war they've always fought. And if they're involved, perhaps the queens are as well. As far off, the queens send out the order to all colonies to exterminate Ouroboros.
We've endured the fierce fighting at Colony 4 and learned that the consuls and Mobius are one and the same. Truths we took for granted continue to crumble at our feet. We have spent so long blindly walking the path set before us without question. But we are more curious now, of our future selves, of our purpose.
Before signing on with Mio and Senna's colony, Tyon was part of Colony Lambda, under its strategist Nimue, and was just as, if not bristlier than he is now, but no less cautious, as his colony, a renowned one led by one Commander Isard, is low on their flame clock, but Tyon is hesitant to attack a little-known colony directly. However, when push came to shove, he folded to the opinions of his peers, and changed his offered strategy to be bolder. However, Nimue and Isard trusted Tyon's judgment implicitly. That plan, however, was a total failure, as the backwater colony surprised them, poisoned the air, and attacked in the smoke. The colony forces were on the back foot, and Tyon and Nimue's unit cornered against a river edge. Nimue decided to give her life to the youths in her care, including Tyon, her protege, so he could live and have a future. And to remember her, he gifts her pocket watch, something dear to her. As Tyon's comrades drag him away and into the water's current, he calls out to her, and is pulled away. In the now, we see again Mobius plotting on how to deal with Ouroboros after Kay's failure, as a short, jester-looking Mobius decides to head out himself. In Colony 4, Ouroboros are witness to a freed colony adjusting to its new existence. Olearis, Ethel's second-in-command, explains to them how the colony ended up in such dire straits, as Ethel once spared an enemy commander named Kamaravi, the mightiest commander in Agnes and her sworn rival. In one of their many duels in which they piloted their own Phoroneses, Kamaravi suffered a machine failure, possibly from poor maintenance. Instead of taking his life, Ethel spared him. Perhaps she did not want it to end due to a simple accident. Perhaps she simply respected him too much. Either way, the ensuing scandal caused her colony to be demoted. As Ethel explains herself, a proper rematch with Kamaravi has become their purpose. Even if they're free from the flame clock, their equal rivalry has become ingrained in them, and gives them the drive to go forward, even as their own time runs short. Ethel gives them directions on how to proceed forward. The Central Ocean is a no-go, as it's a cataclysmic storm forever churning there, as some mysterious force tears apart anything that approaches. The north would bring them right by Agnes Castle, though, just as Tyon suggested, heading south is the safer solution. Still, Ethel doubts this city's existence. Her own colony has tread in the very region they plan to go to and found nothing. More so, to them, they don't even know what a city is. A colony, a person, or an object. The term is totally foreign, so what can they expect to find? Still, they carry on for a chance to keep on living. But the idea of a new way of life is not so easy for everyone, as resentment towards Mio, Senna, and Tyon still lingers in the Kevesi colony. Eyes follow them with suspicion, but Mio looks ahead and tries to move past it. Those who have lost others hold them personally responsible for those deaths. Senna's indignance is calmed by Mio's understanding. They've all killed plenty up to this point. Sure, they had to, but those are cold comforts for the ones left alive. Though there are those that can look past it and help make amends. Because now they have the choice. The choice not to kill. the choice to find their own lives. Speaking of, the party run into Ethel while they search for supplies and begin the very first hero quest of the game. Heroes are special 7th party members which can be slotted in to round out the party and give their character class to a specific inheritor who can then pass it on to the other party members. I will go out of my way to discuss heroes that I feel are pertinent to the themes or story of the game whenever they come up, so keep that in mind. Ethel, naturally, is the first of such heroes, albeit unwilling at first. Ethel places the responsibility of her colony and her allies upon herself alone. Now that they are cut off from the Flame Clock, she is unwilling to risk anybody else's lives, including the party, though she can't really tell them what to do and they have the same feelings towards her, so she agrees to work with them. In the short excursion she spends with them, she has come to grips with her own way of looking at the world, sparing those who were normally her enemies, questioning what actions befitted her position. In turn, she passes on wisdom to the party, especially Noah, about the risk of blindly acting on feeling. How not all actions you perceive as right lead to good outcomes. Noah thinks about it and, trusting Ethel's experience, figures she probably knows what she's talking about. And yet, good came from Ethel herself choosing what felt right, and saving them all that time ago, and now in allowing them refuge. In that moment, at least, the 3 who live because she saved them choose to thank her. As Mio's time grows short and her worry grows greater, the way forward is cleared up and goodbyes have to be said. Before they go, Ethel offers some words of encouragement and wisdom, that while they may have come together by necessity, she can see that the will to reach a common end might be just what Aionios itself wishes for. But Ethel still has obligations to meet, so she and Boliaris plan to head for the castle to report what transpired, excluding the details around the party and their plans. She's not betrayed Keves or anything, she still needs supplies from them, so she will do what she has to, just as she expects them to do the same. Not everyone would be ecstatic at having their whole world flipped upside down or having the flame clocks broken, so she encourages caution and sends them off with some final words.
All that said, you get embers on your coat, you have to brush them off. If push comes to shove, do not flinch. Do whatever it takes, for the greater good. I wish you all a smooth and fruitful journey.
And on they go, marching ever towards the sword, ever towards whatever they think the city is. Dangers abound, enemy colonies and monsters, but for the most part it's smooth sailing, though Senna feels a bit frustrated, as when they have interlinked to become Ouroboros up to this point, it's been the Kevesi sides who have called the shots. Senna wants to put her all into it, to carry a part of the burden and feel like she's doing her part, to not be found lacking. Meanwhile, someone else watches them all from afar, a Kevesi mechanic named Valdi, and the machines called Levnesses which he commands. Valdi is a colorful sort, doesn't take things as seriously as he should, and has a penchant for Nopon. He tries to beat them to get the reward offered by the castle, but as soon as he loses, he just sits back and chills out while trying to figure out why his robots lost. Oh, and he's also his colony's commander, the famed greatest mechanic in Keves, so he's got responsibilities to get back to. Meanwhile, the machines he used to traverse the landscape are currently trash, so yeah. He enlists the party for some fetching. Naturally, Valdi is the next hero we're introduced to, and he's got a very different take on how to live in this world. He doesn't care much about the big picture, he just enjoys the act of making, repairing, to take what is broken and fix it, and then make it better. That's his drive and purpose. But as his colony spends most of its time building machines to do the fighting for them, he's not often seen the result of what he makes. He has a disconnect between the start and end of his creations. While scouring the region for spare parts, he sees the end result of a number of Levnesses, some of which were repaired or built by him and then set off to some other colonies to use. Lands offers him a different perspective in his own Land's way, telling him to make a machine for something other than combat. In this world of war, the idea had not occurred to Valdi, which he immediately jumps on and gets to work making a mini Levness not meant for war. But this moment of possible self-reflection is cut off by the arrival of Valdi's console, Q. Valdi has promised to make the ultimate Levness to wield against Agnes, and this console emotionally blackmails and threatens Valdi's colony into compliance. Valdi goes with the console against Lance's objections. The way Valdi left made it clear that he had no intention of complying anymore, even at his own risk. So while the party follow his recently built mini-mech back to Valdi, Valdi himself prepares to destroy his own creation so it hurts no one. But his consul sees it coming and beats him, before taking control of the half-finished machine to discipline his wayward charge. Another common dynamic in the game, which is first touched upon in this hero quest, is the relationship between the consuls and the heroes who the party free. In the case of Ethel and Kay, it was strictly business, but between Valdi and his consul Q, it has a twisted undertone of paternity or mentorship. Like Q sees himself as teaching Valdi a lesson and being disappointed in his rebellion, as though he sees himself as a creator molding Valdi how he wants. Meanwhile, Valdi gave his creation the right to do what it wants, and what it wants is to protect him. Its destruction lights a fire in Valdi to be more than just a tool for fighting, and stand up to his consul with Ouroboros at his side. So he brings down one of his own creations, as the consul is caught up in the explosion, like a chump. And then Valdi accepts Noah's offer to break their flame clock so he can focus his efforts on making it so neither his creations nor his comrades have to fight. And for that, he offers to help out the party and join up when they need him. Unlike Ethel, who had certain responsibilities to answer for, Valdi is in a better position to actually go out and fight with the Ouroboros. Valdi passes his class on to lands, and a small fraction of truly independent colonies begin to take shape. On that point, there are two places that need attention: Colony Gamma and Colony 9, the home colonies of Ouroboros. To start, when re-entering that territory, they find a much nicer welcome from Gamma than they expected. A rather heartwarming reunion as Mio, Tyon, and Senna are returned to Gamma with open arms, including their commander and mentor, Teach as he is called. He's cordial with the Kevesi side of Ouroboros and even allows them to tour the colony. But when they approach him to discuss what they know, he suggests they talk somewhere else. That somewhere else being up a mountain. So of course Senna's the only one who's hyped for it. Naturally, this is no mere change of scenery, as Teach's relationship with his consul is like a partnership, and this is something that Teach has to take care of himself. However, on the way, he lives up to the nickname they all know him by as he teaches the party members some lessons. First off, he gives the player the ability to traverse previously slippery slopes that barred passage, then reminds Senna not to outpace her friends and to not overextend herself. He succeeds in giving this overtone of lived experience, which can be difficult to actually show in a convincing way. Many times, the characters we're told are good teachers don't exemplify the aspects that actually make a good teacher. Not so with Teach here. Still, there's another lesson to be learned. This time it's one he must learn: the drive and purpose of his old students. As a commander of Agnian troops, he has a responsibility to deal with traitors and deserters, so he brought them here, out of the way as to not distress his other pupils and students. But this is, in the end, a test of character. You only need to take half his health before he backs off and warns the party of the volatility of their new powers, which could consume all around them, and even themselves. He wanted to know if Mio and the others were just swept up by the new power they had, if that was their only reasoning. And if so, then he'd eliminate them. But to his pleasure, he did not find them lacking. So he decides that they're no traitors. But his consul G remains defiant. He's Mobius after all. There was never going to be any lenience. Of course, you probably know this song and dance by now. If K couldn't beat them, G wouldn't do any better. When G lays dead, there's only one option open to Teach, and that is to allow Mio and Noah to finish the job and break the flame clock of Gamma. Back in Gamma, Teach reveals his motivations and sincerity in his violence against them. He'd have killed them if he had to. It's clear that he knows all too well the obsession that power can become, so he had to make sure, even if he himself died in the process. Still, he was not disappointed, and with his approval and willingness to help them, Mio, Tyon, and Senna can come and go from their old home as they please. It's a harsher transition for Noah, Uni, and Lands. Just approaching Colony 9, they are beset by former friends who view them as dangerous. In this case, a young man named Xeon, the new commander of their colony, since the last one was punished for the Kevesi trio's betrayal. Xeon is an old friend and comrade, a poised and tactical man with an understanding of necessity compared to emotion, though Lance is able to quickly get indignance out of him. It takes the party beating into Xeon and his own team, as well as the sudden arrival of Agnian troops against the colony, for Xeon to even consider letting the turncoats back into Colony 9's territory. Of course, not everyone's happy, such as Kite, who used to be in the same squad as that little rat Garvel from way back when. Before Garvel got transferred into a different colony anyway. But Xeon plans to make use of them, even though he has lingering distrust for them. Barbed words abound while he works with them, even while Noah tries to allay his fears. Truth is, though, he already knows they must have had plenty of good reason to abandon ship. He knows the kinds of people Noah and Uni are. And Lance, I guess.
I wasn't talking to you, Lance.
He even lightly suggests they could book it during the assault by Agnian troops, but they remain as steadfast as before. The whole situation, including their attempts to spare the Agnians, leaves Xeon himself reeling. A fledgling commander, he has much to learn and little time to do it. In a world of war, keeping one's hands clean is a daunting task, even for those like Ouroboros with the power to make it real. Which in turn reminds him of Noah, who he once disparaged for his own aversion to conflict. Xeon knows he can trust Noah and the others, but now he must justify it to a higher power. Consul B. Between the voices of his friends and rebels or the consul who orders them from on high without a care for their lives, Xeon knows which side to pick. The flame clock is shattered, and while B puts up a really irritating fight, seriously, why was he this hard? Colony 9 is freed for good. Suffering may lay ahead, but now they get to have the choice. Not all are accommodating. Kite thinks it's all madness and that he should get to call the shots, but that's a problem for another day. For now, Xeon is free to aid Ouroboros and act in the way he sees is fit and right, and that means standing beside them. With that said and done, I think it's time to finish up this chapter of the story, and that means Ouroboros continuing their journey east. As they do, it takes shape in the minds of Ouroboros the concepts which they'd never thought about before. All it took was bringing it to their attention, and the idea of aging came to their minds. And further, they question the system of the world, as that system watches them. The Golden Consul N and the original Mobius, X, Y, and Z, all look upon Ouroboros, seeing the same patterns that they've seen time and time again. Seeing the faults in their static world, believing in the ability to change it, fighting to do so, and being crushed as they fail. How ignorance can truly be bliss. Just as in this moment, Mio and Noah are at ease beside each other, ignorant to so much. Ease, however, is not natural to all of them. Ion's memories come to the surface as he sees a Sophronia tree, a tree once loved by Nimue, who showed him a picture of it in full bloom as he had never seen it before. To see this tree again begs questions to Taion, questions as to Nimue's reason for showing him that. Noah offers an answer, as she wanted to pass on her memories to him, for some part of her to live on through him. And while Taion is left to stew on these thoughts, an old friend of his is ordered to attack. His old commander, Isard, is ordered by Consul J to attack the rebellious soldier, but seeing Taion among them leaves him hesitant. So J takes a different approach, a more aggressive approach. Stumbling upon a long-abandoned wreckage of what appears to be a battlefield, Ouroboros scavenge for parts and resources, but what Uni uncovers is more disturbing.
What is this? Why is my name on here?
Uni!
Shocked out of ancient memories, Uni tries to move on as though it never happened, while the wreckage only begs more questions than it answers. They find a golden flame clock, signifying that this colony was once the pinnacle of Kevis. Furthermore, there are no signs of Agnian remains or machines, except for one that literally burrows out of the ground to attack them, because heaven forbid even underground isn't used to brutalize your enemies. Taion, however, quickly recognizes the symbol on the machine from Lambda, and he knows well what it means. Isard is nearby. He will be watching. The battlefield leaves dread in both Taion and Uni that day, and later that night the resurfaced memories still haunt and rattle her, keeping her from relaxing as she recalls the day Colony 18, the Golden Colony, was torn apart by Mobius. claws extending from it, shredding soldiers apart and toppling their Pharaonis, before it turns to her. But while she shudders in anxious recollection, Taion is there to offer something to ease the spirit and mind. Tea, a practical hobby of his, which he uses to calm her nerves, which is just the reason he picked up the hobby.
Mine do that too.
Huh?
I put down my weapon, look around at my companions, and feel relief. Thinking, finally, another day down. Then I think of tomorrow and the tremors are back. Will I see the same faces when I wake? Will I even be around to see them?
The shuddering anxiety that comes from combat and the fears of whether they will see the next day bonds them. The first thing to bond them, truly, and the first act of either extending an ounce of vulnerability to the other, or really anyone. They both act as the relational balance to their own groups. Uni serves to bring levity and relaxation to the contemplative Noah and Lance, who is often too hard on himself. Meanwhile, Taion effectively has the opposite purpose between Mio and Senna, bringing them the sometimes unfortunate truth and clarity where they need it. One scrutinizes, the other brightens, but in both cases they do not allow for personal weakness. Except for this moment, between each other. The next day they must make progress, but at the same time avoid confrontation. Taion offers his knowledge of the area based off his time and service with Colony Lambda and his part in taking control of the region. When prompted, he reveals the existence of nearby tunnels to avoid the main road, but waffles and backsteps out of uncertainty and caution. Before Lance can get mad about Taion's dithering again, Mio steps in to break it up and insists that they take a course of action, but it hasn't allayed all differences. Taion envies Lance's confidence, the ability to just take a path. He says it in a sarcastic fashion, but he does mean it, just as Lance means it when he responds that he isn't confident. He simply can't stop moving, even to his own detriment, as Noah and Uni often see. He pushes himself to breaking as a way to overcome his perceived faults and the scars of the past, of the day he lost Yoren. In that way, Lance and Taion aren't so different, making up for the mistakes they thought resulted in the loss of a loved one. Chapter 3 is Taion's chapter, as you may have noticed, and we have seen the process of Taion's connection to the three new and important people in his life, Noah, Uni, and Lance. In fact, the conversations he has with them happen in the order you'd expect. Noah is the most open to all this, so of course he reaches out to Taion when he can. As for Uni, she's driven to survive regardless, and so long as she's with those she cares about, that's good enough. Besides, she's naturally partnered with Taion as Ouroboros. All it took was a common bridge for her and him to connect. Then there's Lance, who, just like Taion, was the slowest to accept their new circumstances. One could argue that even now neither fully have, and back when they first met, they were at each other's throats inherently, even after they stopped fighting. Even so, they find something to share, a shared sense of loss and purpose. It's enough to make Lance even cut Taion's rigidity some slack, and for Taion to lower his guard around Lance. Within the Urian tunnels, Ryu goes on a treasure hunt, and Manana learns how to use her cooking pot as a bludgeoning weapon before killing a giant spider. There, their hero quest is done. I jest, but this video is already long enough, and besides, the heroes are about to get gassed. But not just gassed, it's a maneuver Taion recognizes, the same trick that ruined Taion's strategy years prior, and led to Nimue's death. As he realizes the enemy is Agnian and remembers the strategy, he considers that Iserd is using the strategy for a reason, as he also remembers the water vein he used to escape before. This time, however, as he wavers and doubts, Lance calls him to act. They trust his judgment, so he must act. With his new comrades beside him, Taion leads them to the water vein, and they slip out to a nearby basin in front of crashing waterfalls, just as Iserd wanted. Colony Lambda's Pharaonis and a unit of Levnesses emerge from the waterfall to surround and overshadow the party. And Iserd emerges, his iris burning red. He moved everything into place to be exactly as it was the day Nimue died. He knew Taion would escape the same way, so he could encounter him here. Why? So he can remind Taion of that day. The day Nimue, who was so important to them both, died with her life unfulfilled by the failure of Taion's strategy. to bring his past back and drive him into sorrow and despair. Even though long before, Taion returned after her death, Iserd had treated him with kindness. Though Taion refused to accept Nimue's watch when Iserd tried to have him take it, he was still the kindest man Taion knew. Taion blamed the prideful, foolish, and reckless plan he concocted, with leading to her death. It's all that Taion feared and felt about himself come to face him. Every word that whispered fear into his head and drove him to be so cautious before now manifested in the face of the one man he felt he betrayed the most. Even while fighting for his life, he's frozen in dread, leaving him open to attack. One which Uni barely manages to push them both out of the way of, as her wings are clipped in the process. Taion sees those feathers flitting down, and inside he feels an intense desire, the kind Uni once claimed he couldn't feel. With his desire fueling the transformation this time, the Ouroboros form they take leans after him, and has a whole new Agnian aesthetic. This form is an illusionist, which bobs and weaves, tricking and confounding the Pharaonis' weapons. But when Iserd breaks out the heavy cannon, Senna steps up. If Taion can do it, so can she, and she won't let anyone hurt her friends. With titanic strength, she manages to actually flip the entire Pharaonis. Even so, Iserd keeps firing the weapons in all directions, hitting his own soldiers. To shut it down once and for all, Mio and Noah follow the example their allies set, and emerge into yet another new form that propels them to cut down the flame clock. Interesting note, this gauntlet blocks a Pharaonis' laser, which further proves to me that this gauntlet is the Ouroboros gauntlet Matthew once had. Either way, the Pharaonis and Iserd are beaten, but still Iserd drags himself forward while Taion begs him to stop. That if he must have his pound of flesh, then let it be his own. But Iserd's response is not what they expect, particularly because he collapses into a pile of mud. Then Consul J appears, and it becomes very clear who he is. Yorin, reborn as Mobius. I said in the previous video that I think Zed chooses those who become Mobius based off those who act contrary to the Endless Now, and J is our first example. He stepped in and pushed someone out of the way of danger instead of living his life defined by battle. But reborn as Mobius, he lives with a new power, the power to make puppets, mud puppets which are born from the memories Yorin takes from others, who he then reshapes as servants, with all the memories and emotions of the real deal. At least, that's how Jay presents it. To say the least, Lance, Noah, and Uni are dumbfounded while Jay's real desire peeks through. He wants to make puppets of them as well and see what it is they would say. Perhaps because even now he wants to know what they truly think of him. Because as far as he's concerned, they never knew him to begin with. And when he fights as a true Mobius. A truly irritating Mobius who took me way too long to actually beat. But whatever. When they, and me, have gotten a good taste for his power, it still leaves Lance confused, unwilling to accept he's the same Yorin who saved them. But Jay sees that less as saving them, and more as saving himself, rising above the meager flesh that they were and becoming more. And then he leaves.
I should thank you, Lance. 'Cause I get to be like this now, and I owe it to you. Toodles!
Okay, wow. As if Lance didn't already have enough survivor's guilt. But we have enough survivor's guilt to go around. As with the fake soldiers and Jay gone, the party hurries to check on Colony Lambda. And Taion specifically checks on Iserd. While Taion tells Iserd nothing of what he said to Taion, I think some part of him knows the truth. And after all this time, he offers Taion again Nimue's watch. He gives him the words he so desperately deserves.
So someone called you a coward? Nonsense. Considerate's what you are. Perhaps to a fault. You heeded a comrade's opinion. Isn't that right? Here's another thing she mentioned. That if you let us, if we could gain victory through your kindness, she'd have loved to see it.
With the gift of the watch, Isard tells him to return it to where the trees Nimue long to see reside, and bury it there, for all three of them. But she's not the only one being put to rest, even if no one is being sent off, as Noah feels a compulsion, a need to send off the puppets, fake though they were. If some part of them were real, then they still chose to fight and kill them. And Noah seeks atonement for that. Even as Lance and the others stand in confusion, it even leads Uni to wondering about Offseeing as a whole and why it came to be. Tyon offers some explanation based off his interpretation, that it was likely created to bring peace of mind to soldiers fighting on, to feel secure that even those that don't make it to their homecoming still live on in some way. Pretty much everything I explained in my first video on Xenoblade 3, just with some added context. Meanwhile, after, Lance is in a bit of a negative stupor, being apologetic about messing up the colony kitchen when he and Senna flipped a Faranis, and getting snippy with Riku. His problem sensor going off, Noah immediately goes to fix it, and talks to Lance about Yorin. Lance holds himself responsible for Yorin's change into Jay, but Noah wants him to look past that, to ask the bigger questions of why it happened. But Lance isn't like Noah. He can't move past it just like that. It's a flaw of Noah's character. He's deeply contemplative, and always considers the why of things. This makes him quick to compassion, but in instances like this it can come across as dismissive. In Noah's defense, Lance is wrapping himself up in the past and blaming himself, so he's in the right in this instance, but the way he approaches it doesn't really get through to Lance. Still, Noah is thinking about the puppets and why blue motes ascended from them as they played the Offseeing tune, despite the fact that there should not have been any spark within them. It draws him back to his days with Chris and his lessons. Perhaps because, just as the dead have no thoughts, the motes of light which respond to the flute's melody really doesn't have anything to do with the spirit of the person involved. Or rather, it has to do with the emotions of the person playing. And if that's true, then that means it's about them being alive in that moment, which Noah wishes Lance could see. But as usual, it takes Uni to simplify it and bridge the gap, to help Lance see what Noah is saying, even if Noah can come across as above it all. They all share the same feeling. They want to keep going, and to do that, they can't be stuck in the past. Elsewhere, as battles clash and Mobius drink their fill of the harvested flames, En watches in disgust. Mobius though he may be, he has no love for his fellows. How could he? En's reasons for seeking the now are totally different from the other Mobius. It isn't for something puerile like meaningless pleasures and self-aggrandizing, but for the moment itself. Z tells him that all the things the other Mobius do stem from the same place as his own thoughts. But that is all. He cares not about whether En comes to learn or grow, only that he remains as he is, stagnant. Because that's all Zed cares for, if you can even say that it cares. For this world, this moment, to last into eternity.
We all have secrets, deep within. Memories we can never erase. Difficult experiences. It's just a distant dream of mine right now. But if we can just reach out to each other, even a little, we can tease out those delicate shapes. Then, with time, our bonds will grow stronger, until one day.
Thank you everyone for watching the second part of this dive into Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I'll be honest, considering I thought this video would cover chapters 1 to 4, I may have overestimated my ability to do all that. Well, we shall continue on until it's all done. A shout out to my patrons, including my newest patron, Patrick Hudo. I really hope I said that right. Who read the entire Necronomicon backwards and gained the power to make anything that used to make sense totally incomprehensible to the mortal mind. I have not been able to look at hot dogs ever since. And all these other lovely people on this board whose support continues to fuel me like a Mobius feasting on the flames of this world. Wait a minute. If you too want to support this channel, consider donating to my Patreon or becoming a member to gain access to special sneak peeks or uploads early, time and editing willing, and access to a private Discord where you can interact directly with me and some other lovely folks in our own corner of the internet. As always, I am the Hearth Guy, and I will see you all next time around the hearth. You know, this game has been pretty chill so far. No huge shockers or emotional gut punches, yeah. Nice and slow and thoughtful. Ain't no way something could happen to destroy literally every person who ever played this game. Nope, no way. I've never heard of an eclipse. Have you?